Attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good evening and welcome to our Destination Imagination Colorado webinar for the Improv Games. This is our improvisational challenge for 2015 tournament season. On the phone, we have our affiliate challenge masters, Marianne Barwick, Marianne Goff, and Shauna Kogler, and they will be doing the presentation today. If at any point you have questions that you would like them to answer, please type them in your question box of your control panel for your GoToWebinar, and we will get them answered as soon as we can. Okay, girls, take it away.
Okay, hello, I'm Marianne Goff, and I'm one of the 3 affiliate challenge masters for the Improv Challenge. We like to start by welcoming you to Improv. It's different than any of the other challenge, and we really want to thank you for taking the time to work with your teams for this. You can switch pages now, Kate. Okay, these are our 3 challenge masters. I've introduced myself, so Shauna, you and Marianne want to introduce yourselves?
Yes, I'm Shauna Kogler, and you can see our emails are up there if you ever have any questions.
And I'm Marianne Barwick.
And each of us is also a challenge master for a different region in Colorado. Now, so this is the list of your regional challenge masters. We're not going to leave this up here for a long time because this will be posted later on the website, and then you don't have to sit and try to write down all this information right now. But know that every region in Colorado, with the exception of Southwest, has at least one name, oh, and Boulder too. Everyone else has at least one named challenge master, and this is the person that if you have questions about your regional tournaments, these are the people that you should go to, or again, like we said before, you can go to any of us. Ding. Go the other direction. Okay. All right. So we thought we'd start out by talking a little bit about the Improv Challenge in general. First of all, if you're used to other improv challenges, you're used to kids writing scripts, having costumes and scenery where they solve a problem, and that doesn't happen in the Improv Challenge. In Improv, kids are going to be asked to create an improv sketch, and what the sketch is defined here as a short theatrical scene created on the spot with randomly selected improv elements. Now, we're going to talk a little bit later about what those improv elements are specifically, but the idea is that the teams during their practice sessions will be learning about these different elements and practice putting them together, but they won't know specifically what they're going to get until the day of the tournament. And the way they get those elements is through the selection process. We're going to go through that also a little bit in more detail, but the selection process means that when they come in at the beginning, they're going to pull things out of bags to randomly get the items that they're going to use in their skits. Then there's preparation time. The way that improv works is they're given a certain amount of time before they perform where they plan their skit in front of the audience. And this year it's going to be 1 minute of preparation time. That's a very short amount of time, so it's important for them to get used to how to put elements of a story together. After their 1 minute preparation time, they will do their presentation. And again, this year the presentation is going to take 2 minutes for their sketch. And finally, integration is a word that you're going to see in the challenge a lot. And integration is how you take all these varied elements and put them together so that they fit together in a story. What we don't want is a lot of random elements that aren't in any way related. I'll give you an example from a couple of years ago. There was a team, they had to research different famous people, and one of the teams had researched, all of a sudden I can't think of his name. Who's the guy who ran the race in the Olympics?
Jesse Owens?
Yes, Jesse Owens. I kept thinking Jesse Jackson, and I knew that wasn't right. Okay, so Jesse Owens was a character in the skit, and their truck broke down outside of town, and they're going, how are we ever going to get this fixed? And he said, well, when I was in the Olympics, I ran the mile, and blah blah blah. I'm a really speedy runner, so I can go get what we need and come back. So we didn't just learn that he was a runner, but he used his running to solve the problem in the skit, and so that's how they integrated it into the skit. Now, the other thing that we talk about is clarifications. And every challenge has clarifications. What those are, there's two kinds. There's general and there's team specific. Every year, the challenge masters will realize that there's something that needs more information, and they'll issue general clarifications to the team. And the next page will show you how to find those. Okay, so this is a screenshot of the destinationimagination.org page. And if you look across after the word Destination Imagination, you can see About Us, what we do, Get Involved, and Challenge Program. So when you click on the Challenge Program, it takes you down to the Clarifications title there. So when you click on that, we go to the next slide. And here's what you'll see on the right-hand side. You see a list of the different challenges. Ours is improvisational. So when you click on that button, you'll see the general clarifications. Now, right now, there's 3, and I'm only showing you 2 because the third one only applies to university teams, so it doesn't apply to us. So the first one is about the instant challenge portion of our tournament, and so it's just telling you that when you're at tournament, every team in your challenge in your division will get the same instant challenge. But the one that's really important is clarification number 2. And this says section A3B2 should read, and then it gives you some information about that. We'll talk about that in a minute. But I just want to backtrack and say I hope that you guys have a copy of the challenge with you as you're going through. If not, we'll try to make page references so when you do have it, you can look at what we're talking about. But for A3B2, in the challenge, they gave us the wrong number, so these guys have written it correctly. What happens for secondary and university level only teams, they must select at least 2 street performances from each column in Table 2. They will then select 2 additional street performances from any column for a total of 12. Well, in the original challenge, the numbers they gave us only added up to 11, and it was supposed to be 12. So that's an important one. And that is A3, okay, what is that? A3B2 is on page 65. So that's something that you're going to want to make sure if you have a secondary team. If you don't have a secondary team, it doesn't apply to you. Okay, let's go to the next one. So when you're looking at the challenge, there are certain things that are really important to be aware of. Look for the musts, the wills, the mays, and the nots. If it says that it must happen, you have to make it happen, or there will be you will lose points. There's many different examples of where they say must. So what we suggest is going through with the kids and having them take a highlighter and highlight the word must every time so they are aware of where it is. I know on page 65, when they're talking about the required elements of street performance, they say elementary and middle level teams must select at least 1 street performance per column. So the musts are very important. The wills are more procedural, like they might say that the timekeeper will let them know when they have to stop. The mays are something that they may or may not choose to do, so make sure you understand if it says may, that's different than must. It means they can, but it's not going to have an effect on their score if they leave something out there. And then there's the nots. The nots are the things that you may not do. Among those are you may not have costumes or scenery. So those are all things that it's important for the kids and you to go through and make sure you're aware of all the places where those words show up. Now, I'm going to assume that at least some of you out there have copies of the challenge, and just kind of give you an overview of how the challenge is written. And it starts on page 61 and gives you the general requirements of the challenge. And then on 69, there's a copy of the scoring elements. We're going to go into all of these a little more detail in just a minute. And then at the very end are the tournament data forms. These are all things that you're going to need to know for the tournament. So let's go on to the next slide. All right. Now this is a visual. This is a graphic to get you to see what the improv challenge is going to look like this year. I told you that there were improv elements, and these are the 4 of them. There's an improv game, a street performer, a situation, and a setting. And each one of these must fit into the sketch that they'll be doing. Now, I'm saying sketch, but actually there's going to be 3 different sketches. But they're each going to have to include these 4 elements. Next slide. So what's going to happen is that the team must present 3 separate sketches, so they will draw 3 different sets of improv elements. And each sketch is totally unrelated to the other one. So it's going to be different from how we've done things in the past. And it's going to be interesting to see how this all works out. But basically what's going to happen, they'll get a set of improv elements. Kate, can you go back 1 slide? Okay, so they will pull an improv game, a street performer, a situation, and a setting. And they're going to pull that 3 different times. And then the announcer is going to tell them their first set of improv elements. They're going to plan and do a skit, and then they're going to get the next set. So it's going to happen 3 different times. Okay, let's go up and go to the next one. All right, so the first element is the improv games. And for those of you who have your challenge, it's listed on page 64. Now, depending on what level you have, it will determine how many games the kids have to actually pick. I think there's about 20 choices on the improv game list. And the teams, like if you're in elementary, they only have to pick 6 to put on their tournament data form. So what that means is they don't have to know how to do all of these different games. They only have to choose the 6 that they think are the best for them. And we will not ask them to do any of the other games, only the ones that they've put on their tournament data. For middle school, it's 8, and for secondary, it's 12. Now, it's really important to read the descriptions of these different challenges and or the different games, and to understand how each of them is to be presented. I've highlighted these 2 particular notes because 3A, was that a 6? Yes.
6.
I can't do my Roman numerals. Okay, it says that the entire sketch must be performed in the form of the selected game. What that means is, I'm just going to read a couple of the games in case you don't have a copy of the challenge in front of you. Award show, courtroom, dating game, daytime talk show. So if they decide to do dating game, if that's the one that they end up drawing, then the entire skit must be in the form of a dating game. It's of the dating game, and they can't just do it for a little while. It says that it must there. See, the entire sketch must be performed in the form of the selected game. So that's one of the musts I was talking about. And then if you read through them, they have certain definitions of each game, like on the courtroom. It says, 1 player is a judge and the others are specific characters. Okay, that means somebody asked once, can more than 1 player be the judge? And the answer is, are you looking for the program materials? Aha, thank you. So it says only 1 player can be the judge, so that's one of their rules. Another one, which Okay, we're going to go to page 64. So almost there. There we are. Okay. Go down. Let's see. I want to go down to a little further down on the list to questions only. Okay. In questions only, it says at least one player is initially not part of the scene. And it goes on and talks, all the sentences in the scene must be phrased in the form of a question. And the last line says, all players must eventually participate in the scene, even if it means not using a question on purpose. So what they're saying is everybody has to be involved in that scene. So make sure that everybody has a spoken line. So it's going to be really important for the teams to read through and understand these games and choose the ones that they find easiest to work with, the ones that sound fun to them or that they feel like they've mastered. Some people just don't like particular games, so make sure they find the ones that they like the best. Okay, so can we go back to the PowerPoint? Okay. All right. So now we were on improv elements. Thank you. And so at the bottom it says that they're going to be scored on effectiveness and integration of how they use the improv games. So that means they want to make sure that they're effective in portraying how the game is played and also that they integrate it in the skit. It just doesn't kind of happen with no relationship to the other elements. Okay, so let's go to the next element, which is the street performances. And this is where the clarification came. Oops. So can we go back to the challenge, to the copy of the challenge? Kate? Yeah. Okay, so on the next page, we have the information about the street performance. So if you look at this page, it says B and then II. This is where it says the secondary level and university teams must select at least 2 street performances from each column. They will then select 1 additional street performance for a total of 12. Well, if you do the math, that's 11, which is why they issued that general clarification for us. So if you have a secondary level team, you do get to have 12. You do need to choose 12 street performances. And now scroll down to the bottom of that page. All right, so here's a list of the street performances. So what's going to happen is that they have to choose 1 from each column, or depending on the age level that they are, they can't pick all of them from 1 column. And if you look more closely at each of the columns, you can see they kind of do a different emphasis on the performances. So like column A has a lot of musical things and column E has a lot of artistic things. They want the kids to be choosing from all these different categories. So maybe if your team, again, they're going to look through these and try to find out which ones they like the best. Maybe they like mariachi band and contortion in column B and then parkour in column C. They get a chance to try some of these out and decide which would make the most interesting performances. So now let's go back to the PowerPoint. Okay, so again, elementary and middle school will just choose 1 from each column plus 1 free choice for a total of 6. And secondary, as we've said several times, they're going to have a total of 12. The street performances are all being scored on effectiveness and integration. So again, we want to see how effectively they show us what the street performance is like, as well as how they integrate. So now they've got their improv game, so how are they going to make the street performances part of the improv game? So let's move on to the third element, and that's the situation. So what the situation is something that happens to the team during the skit, and it could be anything. The examples they give in the challenge are things like there's a shortage of marshmallows, you're trying to decide to have lunch, or a team member has a pet kangaroo. It could be, like we said, just about anything. So when we did our training With the in-person training with the team managers, we spent some time showing them how to brainstorm with their kids what the different situations might be. And there's a couple different ways you can do that. The one thing we did with the group in the face-to-face meeting was we just had everybody in the group, just shout out different situations. And, as a group, we came up with about 25 different situations. So that's one way that you could, that's the basic form of brainwashing, no. Okay, of brainstorming. So that's one way to do it, but there are lots of other ways to do it. Another way might be to have each kid just give them a pad of sticky notes and let them write as many different situations as they can, or note cards or something like that. Then you collect them, and then when you're practicing, you'll have a bunch of different things to choose from. A third alternative might be to break them into groups, and 2 or 3 kids in a group, and have them see who can come up with the most different situations, and kind of have some bragging rights for the team that comes up with the most ideas. Now this one is going to be scored for the creative and effective performance of the situation. So I'm just going to read one of the ones off the list that we generated. The library ran out of books. So they want to see how creatively they're going to portray the library running out of books and how effective their performance is. Do they have a creative idea, and then do they give us a good performance so we understand the situation? You notice this one does not have a score for integration, but it will help your story if all the different pieces are integrated. And the final one is on the next slide. So the final improv element is the setting. Let's see, could we just go back a minute to the situation? I just remembered one thing I forgot to mention. Okay, the thing in yellow is very important. The situation must be the focus of the skit. So that means if you get the pet kangaroo and all you say is, here's my pet kangaroo, and you never hear anything about it again, that is not the focus of the skit. You want to make sure that whatever element you draw, it's mentioned throughout the course of the skit. Because when things just appear one time, that's not a focus, and we're looking to see it carried through the whole skit. Okay, we can go back to the other one. All right, so the location, the setting is a location in which a significant portion of the sketch must take place. Here's another must for them to pay attention to. A significant portion of the sketch means that, let's say that you're doing something with a bus, and if all that happens is they get off the bus and then they go play a game someplace else, that's not significant. The whole skit should try to involve the bus. And this one is being scored for creative and effective performance of the setting, just like the other one was. So again, we're looking to see how creatively they let us know what the setting is and how effectively they perform in that setting. Now those are the 4 elements, the 4 different improv elements. And what you're going to do, but when you're getting ready to go to tournament, like I said before, you're going to choose the things that you like the best and want to use for your challenge. Now the tournament data form, if we can go back to the challenge, Kate, can we do that easily? Okay, and go to page 72. Almost there. Every team in every challenge has some kind of tournament data form. And in this case, what it does, it tells the appraisers, it gives them some information about what to look for. Now the first page is got your basic team information, and then if you're an elementary level team, you'll fill out this page with improv games and street performances. Go to the next one. So then we've got the same place for middle level and secondary, and they each have the correct number of elements that you need. So whichever level you are, you'll know if you filled it out correctly, if you filled out all the numbers that they tell you to fill out. So let's go back to the challenge again. And here's an example of a tournament data that was for a middle level team. And so we can see these are the improv games that this hypothetical team chose. Freeze tag, award show, film trailer, musical theater, superheroes, newscast, infomercial, and sound effects. Now on the other side, there's street performance. There's the buckets, the sword swallowing, hula hoop, fortune telling, miming, and juggling. Those things they can prepare ahead of time. They've at least limited their universe to these items. But for the other elements, for the setting and the situation, they're going to be provided random settings and situations when they get there. They're not going to have any idea of what those could be. We will tell you that they try to make them age appropriate. So it shouldn't be anything too difficult for the littler kids. They tend to make them more complex for middle school and high school, but it shouldn't be anything that people totally don't understand. But it would be good for you to practice many different settings and many different situations and throw in some weird ones so that if they, it'll give them a chance to try things that are a little out of what they're used to. So this is their tournament data form. They'll bring that with them to the tournament, and we'll be checking them because we're going to have somebody look and make sure that the street performances come from all the different columns. Let's go to the next one. All right. Now, so you've got all these different pieces, and now we talked about how they're going to be doing 3 different sketches in a row. So this is a copy of a part of the score sheet, and I wanted to show you this so you could see how the scoring is going to actually work. For the improv challenge, if you're familiar with other challenges, they have to have team choice elements, but we don't have that in improv. So the bulk of our scores will come from the sketches that they're doing. So if you look at sketch 1, the effectiveness and integration of the improv game, that's up to 15 points. You notice for each element it's worth up to 15 points, and then the overall effect of sketch 1 is given up to 20 points. Well, so that's a total of 80. Now look, sketch 2 is exactly the same, because even though they're going to be picking new elements, we're scoring them all the same way. And go to the next page, next slide. Hello. There. Okay, so sketch 3 is also the same thing, also 80 points, exactly the same. So what's happening is they're doing these 3 different sketches, and each one is going to be scored along the same rubric, and then the final thing that they're going to be scored on is teamwork. And they're going to be scored in 2 different places, because the way this challenge works, like we said before, they're not writing their script ahead of time. They're going to have 1 minute to plan in front of the audience. And Shauna's going to talk about more about that in a minute. So during that preparation time, the appraisers are going to be watching them for teamwork. Now, what does good teamwork look like during preparation times? It can look like a lot of different things. But the important thing is to make sure that everybody is participating in some way, that one person isn't railroading all their ideas and everybody else is just saying, okay, okay, okay. So we want to try to make sure that everyone's contributing to the planning during that time. And one thing that we notice, especially with new teams, is that they tend to huddle in a little circle and put their heads together and whisper to each other, and then nobody can hear the planning. But since we're scoring them on that time, we like to, if we can't hear them, we will have the appraisers get up and walk and stand closer so that they can hear them. Now this can be kind of intimidating to kids who aren't expecting it. So please prepare your kids, explain to them that during the preparation time they are being scored and the appraisers do need to hear what they're talking about. So you can ask them, well, how can we make sure that the appraisers know what we're doing? How can we make sure they see our teamwork during planning time? And hopefully, practice that a lot. And practice sometimes, if you can't hear them, practice standing up right next to them and just listen. Don't say anything, just listen. So anyway, that's during the first part, and that's worth up to 30 points. Then there's teamwork during the 3 sketch performances, and that's also worth 30 points. Now, when improv teams are doing their sketches, the way you see good teamwork is in how they accept each other members' offers and try to move the skit along together. Sometimes there can be, when we talk about the dominant person in the preparation time, that can also happen in the sketches, and it doesn't matter what the other kids are trying to do. The one person keeps trying to steer the sketch the way that they want to do it. So, excuse me. So that would be lower teamwork. So the teams want to really practice playing those games and working together so that they understand how to work together to build a good story. Now, if you look down at the bottom of this slide, you'll see on the left-hand side, the central challenge scoring is pretty evenly divided. Obviously, the first 3 are exactly the same because Sketch 1, Sketch 2, and Sketch 3 are each worth 27%. The teamwork is worth 19%. It's not worth as much, but if you don't have as good teamwork, it's hard to get high scores in the other areas. So teamwork is very important. Don't let them skimp on that. Now, in the graphic on the right, you'll see that we'll be putting the improv scores together with the instant challenge scores for your final overall score. So in the improv challenge, the team part, these sketches, are going to be worth 75% of your total score, and instant challenge is going to be worth 25%. So instant challenge is still very important, and that often makes a difference between successful teams and unsuccessful teams. So make sure to spend time working on instant challenge with your kids as well. Okay, let's see what's next. All right, so now what I just did was go through the basics of what the challenge is, what the challenge looks like, what you're going to be working on with the kids. Shauna is going to talk to you now about how to pull it all together and how it's going to look on the tournament day. So take it over, Shauna.
Before Shauna before Shauna takes over, if there's any questions, please put them in the question box. Marianne went over a lot of information, but so please put questions in the question box, and I can interrupt Shauna when we get those in. But otherwise, Shauna, go take it away.
Okay. All right. So when you check in to the prep area for improv, you need to be there 20 minutes beforehand with your 5 copies of your tournament data forms filled out with the information in it. 1 copy of page 3. It's a creative process, and you can do that, at the end before we come to the tournament. Talk to your kids about the creative process and how they solve this challenge. 2 Declaration of Independence forms. 1 is for the improv challenge and 1 is for instant challenge. So don't give them both to us. We'll give you back one. But if your kids would like to have a clean copy of the challenge with them, they would bring it with no writing on it. The research notes apply to their research of the. Yeah.
You're coming across very garbled. Is anyone else using the internet in your house?
Probably everyone. Hang on, I'll be right back.
Okay.
Okay, so should I keep talking while she's looking?
Yeah, why don't you?
Okay. Technical problems. Okay, so they can bring a clean copy of the challenge with them, which they can use during their planning time. They can also bring research notes, but the only thing that can be included in the research notes are notes about the different games or the different street performances. They cannot bring plot scenarios or who's going to do what or any of that stuff. It's just strictly research notes. If they bring anything else, the prep area appraiser will have to take those notes away. So make sure if they decide to bring notes that is truly research. And I'll tell you, with only 1 minute of planning time, they're not going to have a whole lot of time to look at those notes. So don't get them too complex. Is Shauna back?
I am back. We're checking my sound.
Oh, okay. Should I keep going?
Am I still garbled?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead.
All right. So I'm
Marianne,
going to keep going.
Yeah,
Marianne,
sorry.
will they
Yeah.
have, will the team,
Yes.
will the team be read the description of the game during the time, when they tell the kids the 4 elements?
You know, we're going to get to that slide in a minute, and it doesn't say description. It just says name of the improv game.
Because they've already picked it and put it on their tournament data form.
So they should know what, in theory, they should know what it is already.
Exactly.
So yeah, we'll get to that page in a minute, and then you'll see what the form looks like. But they are not going to give the whole description. They are just going to give the name of the game. So
Last
anyway,
year, there's another
yeah.
question about last year. The appraisers asked our group about their research. Are they expected to have questions after the sketches this year about their research?
You know, sometimes they ask. I will say my team never brought any research. So, you know, they just said it's all in our heads, and they said, okay, that's fine. Sometimes they just ask about the research because they like the kids to talk about, you know, what they learned during that, but it's not something that they're scoring them on. It's just, you know, kind of to give the kids a chance to, you know, talk about some of the things they did. But it's definitely not, it's not a requirement.
Oh, that's it.
Okay. So the other things they're supposed to bring is a team sign, and they're in the challenge it tells you what the size of the sign has to be. It's not being scored, and it's mainly there to tell people in the audience who is performing and to let the appraisers, because in the course of a day a lot of teams come through, and when you're sitting in the audience and you're looking at your schedule, you can tell if we're on schedule or not by looking at the team sign that's up there, and then you kind of have an idea where, you know, where we are in our time frame. And the other thing that you can bring is team clarifications if you have any. At the beginning, I talked about general clarifications, which are the ones that they issue for everybody. But sometimes teams have specific questions that they want an answer for, and so they can write directly to the challenge masters, the international challenge masters, and ask those questions directly of them. You can ask one question, you can submit one question at a time. You shouldn't put a whole bunch into one letter, and you're limited to 10 team clarifications. But if there's something that your team just wants to know, I know the year that we had cardboard as one of the materials they could bring, lots of people wrote specific clarifications about what kind of cardboard you could have. Well, we don't have any of that this year, but if you have questions about maybe a particular improv game or you know, a street performance, anything that you think that the challenge masters should be answering, then you should write it to them. Sometimes if you send us an email and you say, you know, I'd like to know, do you think I can do this? We may say, you know, that's a good question. Why you should ask for a clarification on that, because we are not the ultimate authorities. The international challenge masters are, and we don't want to accidentally tell you something wrong because maybe the international people have, you know, figured it a different way. So you can always ask us, and if we don't know the answer, then we will refer you to the International Challenge Masters and a clarification. And back in that, on the slide I did earlier where I was showing you the general clarifications, there is a point on there where it says, if you would like to ask for a team clarification, click here. So you have to have your team number, but then you can go in and ask any questions you need to. Now the other thing that you may not bring to check in is props, scenery, or costumes, because in the improv challenge none of those things are allowed. And you're not even allowed to use, like if the kids decide to portray a character and somehow alter their clothes to do that, you're not allowed to do that. The clothes are not, scenery or costume are not allowed. Everything's supposed to be done through their imagination. Okay? All right, so this is the selection process we were talking about earlier. And what's going to happen is that we're going to have 4 different bags, one for each element. So when the teams come to the check-in site, which we said they should come 20 minutes ahead of time, there's a lot of stuff that has to happen during those 20 minutes. We have to check all your forms, and then we have to do all the selection. So we really want you to be there 20 minutes ahead of time. Do not show up right before your performance time, or you're going to throw the whole tournament off schedule. So come early, and then we're going to do a drawing process. From the first bag, they're going to draw 3 numbers, and we usually put them on poker chips. So they'll reach into the bag and pull out 3 numbers and hand them to the prep area appraiser without looking at them. And then they'll do the same thing for the street performer. They're going to reach in and pull out 3 numbers from there. After that, they're going to reach into the situation bag and pull out 3 slips of paper, or maybe index paper. It depends on what we've got. Oops, go back. And then 3 slips of paper from the setting bag. So now we've got a total of 12, 4 times 3, 12 different things that the prep area appraiser is going to be writing down on your forms to be handed to the announcer. So they're going to hand those to the check-in appraiser after each item is drawn. Then we hope to have 2 check-in appraisers so that one can be writing all of this down as you're doing it. And then we go to the next page. So this is what this is. We got this form from the DI site. This is the form that the teams are going to be handed with the information about their improv elements. So it has team number on one side, and this one is for sketch 1. So they're going to be labeled sketch 1, sketch 2, and sketch 3. So when they pull these, then and they give them their first improv elements, they're going to get a form that looks like this, and it's going to say improv game, questions only, street performance, hula hooping, the situation, studying for a test, the setting, a desert island. Now then, the kids are going to have to take those 4 elements, and in their 1-minute time, they have to put it together into a skit with a beginning, middle, and end. It's a lot has to happen in a very short amount of time. So it's going to be really important for those kids to get a lot of practice at how to build a story. Okay? Now, we've talked a lot about how that we're going to, pick all these elements and how they're going to plan ahead of time for them, and it all comes together when they get to the performance area. Now, the performance area, we're guaranteed at least an 8 by 10 area. We try to make it bigger if we can. Sometimes that's all the room that we have. But it's going to have a section in it that's going to be the launch area, I think they call it, and that's where the team is going to start. So they're going to go into the launch area. The timekeeper announcer is going to greet them and read a script to the team in the audience. And this is where he welcomes everybody. He tells them that they're in the improv challenge, and let's give these teams have worked very hard, so turn off your phones and all of those sorts of things. Then he's going to read the first 4 improv elements to the team. So he's going to take that piece of paper that we just saw on the last one, and he's going to read those improv elements out loud to the team, and then he's going to hand them the list of the elements. So they will have that list with all 4 elements in their possession during their planning time. The team then has 1 minute to plan a performance, and at the end of the planning time, the timekeeper announcer says stop, and at that point they just have to stop talking. And again, remember that we'd like to hear them during their planning, so encourage them to plan in regular voices, not whispers. So after their 1 minute, the timekeeper says stop. Then he's going to say begin, and the team has 2 minutes to present their sketch. If they don't get finished at the end of 2 minutes, the timekeeper will call stop. They're not allowed to keep going. So this is another place where they're going to have to get used to what time feels like. They've got 2 minutes, and so they should spend a lot of time practicing. Now, when you first start doing the skits, let them take more than 2 minutes so they get used to the idea of how to put the skits together. but as it gets closer and closer to tournament, you want to get them more and more doing it like it's going to be at the tournament. So in that last month before they actually go to competition, start imposing the regular time limits on it and make sure like that they understand, like during that 1 minute planning time, they can only talk to each other. They cannot turn around and ask you as the team manager any questions. During their planning time, the only thing that they can do, the only other person they can talk to is the timekeeper announcer, and they can ask how much time they have left. That's only during their planning time. So, during their performance time, they cannot stop and ask how much time they have left. We will not be able to tell them that. Now, if they want to bring a timing device with them at the tournament, they are allowed to do that. It used to be it could only be a watch, but now they're saying timing device. So whatever that means for the kids, it just shouldn't be making a noise. And I know a lot of kids use cell phones like watches and timers right now. Make sure if they decide to do that their ringer is turned off, because it would really be a bummer if their phone rang when they were trying to use it as a timer. So anyway, that's what's going to happen. 1 minute planning, 2 minutes presentation, and then they say stop, and then they're going to do that again 2 more times. So we've talked a little bit about the fact that, audiences are going to want to clap after each sketch is ended.
That's Marianne Barwick's cell phone.
Sorry. Trying to
Okay.
get my family to grab that.
Okay. What we're going to have in our announcer script is something like, please hold your applause till all 3 skits are done, because they want to keep this moving. So at the end of 2 minutes, the skit will be over. They'll say stop, and then they'll say, team, here's your second set of improv elements. And they'll read them and hand them, and they'll go through this process 2 more times. Now, it doesn't have to be a 2-minute skit. Some skits may be over in a minute, and that's fine. Just work with your teams on how they will let us know that they're done, because sometimes when they get finished, they all just kind of start milling around and looking at each other. And it is helpful, for the appraisers and for the audience. We want to know when we should, appreciate what they're doing. So make sure to discuss with them about when you're done, how are you going to let us know, how you're going to let the appraisers know.
Marianne?
Yes.
You had and I want to say, Sean, are you back on?
I am. Can you hear me now?
And you sound better.
Oh, you sound way better. We have a question from Erica, who wants to know about beginning, a middle, and end. It says on the challenge, under the situation, it says it does not need to be resolved. How is this different from presenting something with a beginning, middle, and end?
Do you want to take that, Shauna?
Sure. Kind of. Well, most stories have a beginning, a middle, and end. Like I said, it doesn't have to be resolved, but Marianne, I might need some help with this.
Okay. Well, just for example, what if the situation is that that aliens land in your backyard? You don't have to you don't have to have a fight with the aliens or anything like that. You don't have to solve a problem. You just have to work them into the story that the aliens land. But you don't have to figure out, you don't have to say, well, then all the aliens die or something like that. They just have to make sure that they address it in the skit, but that, again, you don't have to come up. Like in the past, sometimes it would be things like, I'm trying to think, well, there are no cardboard boxes. And then you don't have to solve the challenge. You just somehow live with it without necessarily solving it. So
actually...
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was just going to say they're actually separate items, Erica, that the story needs to always have the beginning, middle, and end. The situation is just something you have to deal with. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yep.
Well put.
Okay. So let's see, we're on the slide about the performance area, and the last one is that when they're finished, they will talk to the appraisers. And somebody asked earlier about they going to be questioned on their research materials, and the only questioning will be to the extent of what they might say. So they might ask them, how did you research this, or what did you learn? But again, that's just to give the kids a chance to talk. So, Shauna, you want to go back?
Sure, I got a little thrown by logging back on.
Oh.
So, do you want me to do this, getting ready to improv?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, so when you're practicing with your teams, of course, you choose your improv games, and you can do other games that lead up to these games that you have to choose, like dating game and award show. So start with some simple improv games, and then add the other elements of the challenge as you go. So you might just do an improv game with a setting. Try putting it in a setting, or an improv game with one of the street performances. And then add each of those elements as you go until you have all 4 in there. And you can practice doing the improv with familiar stories like the 3 Bears, Goldilocks and the 3 Bears, for example. And in each of these practices, you always do want to do a beginning, a middle, and end, because you don't want to just be called, called stop, and you're in the middle of a sentence. So, you want to try to resolve things pretty quickly as far as having a story, if possible in 2 minutes. The research and selecting the street performances, that's what they do on their own, or as groups they can do research on these types of street performances and choose the ones that they're most comfortable doing and practicing. Research and then practice them, and then choose the ones they like the best, or that are the best at. There's lots of improv games on the internet, and I think we had handouts at our face-to-face meetings. Are those going to be posted anywhere, Marianne?
Kate, can we give you a copy of our handouts to post with the webinar or somewhere?
You certainly can, and I will definitely do that.
Okay, because those are good places to find the improv games and theater games. If you look up under theater games, there's lots of improv games there too. It's important to have the kids take turns being different, leader, timekeeper, throwing out ideas to learn those roles as far as doing teamwork well. If the same person is the leader all the time and they're kind of railroading the other kids into their ideas, the teamwork isn't as good. So let each child be a leader, and because some people go, oh, I don't think I want to be the leader, I'll be the timekeeper, because it's a hard job, timekeeper's a hard job too. So let them practice doing those roles so that they can learn to make their teamwork a lot better and smoother. Teamwork activities. You can go to the Home Depot and do things. If you had one of the other challenges, pick out, I'm getting off tangent here, teamwork activities.
And there's lots of things they can do for teamwork activities besides just working on the challenge. I mean, sometimes I remember someone talking about they made ice cream sundaes, and she bought all these different toppings, but the team had to agree on just one topping for everybody, and everybody got the same one. So that was one where they had to really do some negotiating and working together to figure out what would be acceptable to everybody. We used to do sleepovers sometimes just because they enjoyed hanging out together. So go ahead.
I was going to say one of the most fun teamwork activities to do is the team sign. That's always a fun time when they can all chip in to do the team sign that they bring to the tournament.
And even choosing the team name is fun. That can be a good thing.
Yep. And I believe, Marianne, you talked about practicing the tournament format.
A
You know,
little
doing
bit,
the
yeah,
drawing.
but
Yeah.
that's really important to do it the way it's going to be on tournament day. So make sure you understand the format and make sure that they understand it and practice it over and over again.
And watching the time as they're doing their, 3 skits to see how they can narrow down to those 2 minutes or less to do their actual sketch. And doing it in front of parents is always really fun. It helps them be in front of an audience and not be so nervous. And the parents get a kick out of it. We've had in the past just some hilarious things happen during performances that we remember today, like don't make me get my spatula, things that you will never forget. So it gives them a chance to perform in front of people other than, just their coaches. So anything else you guys want to add? Yep. Oh, anything else?
Look at that.
Whose Line Is It Anyway is a great tool to learn about improv games and how they're done very well, and so that the kids can practice those. Improv performances in town. I know there's probably more in Denver than some of the other cities that we live in. Like I think there's some in Colorado Springs, but you find family-friendly ones. And you can also go to other tournaments and watch just to see how it all works and how the other teams present their performances. And it's not illegal to do that. Of course, if you're the first tournament like I am, you can't. But if you make it to state, then you can go watch and learn, definitely learn. So.
Yeah, and it's always good to, I know the first year that I did improv, I was lucky enough to be able to go watch at another tournament because I was still having trouble wrapping my mind around how all of these pieces were going to work. So it was nice to go and be able to see it being done ahead of time. So
and I know we've had people ask, can we go watch the other teams perform? And yes, there is an audience, and so you're obviously allowed to go to other tournaments and watch other teams perform. So.
Yeah, so that's we've given you the basic overview of the challenge. It is a lot of moving pieces, and we want to make sure that you're comfortable with all those pieces and that you understand the process. So I know this is going to be posted on our YouTube channel, right, Kate? Hello?
Sorry.
Okay, well it is. It's going to be posted.
Yeah, I was on mute. Yeah, it's going to be posted on our YouTube channel, and other documents will be posted on our website.
Oh, okay. So we have a list of resources which we will post on the Colorado Destination Imagination, or DI Colorado. Right. What do we call it?
DI Colorado.
DI Colorado. Okay. And one thing that I was going to say is one of my most useful websites that I found when looking up improv information is called improvencyclopedia.org, and it'll be on our list of resources. The only warning I would give you is that if their game description differs from the one in the challenge, you make sure you're doing the way it's described in the challenge, not the way that it's described on the other page on the website. But it has teamwork games, it has all kinds of different games about storytelling and things like that. So it's a great place to go, to look for different things. So I guess, Marianne, do you have anything else that we've left out?
No, I just think my only advice is to really try to practice what that day looks like. And, we've seen teams shy away from that whole check-in process just because they are unfamiliar with what's going to happen. So to try and reenact that is really key to their comfort level day of. And we're here to help, so asking questions along the way, and we'll do the best we can to help you.
Yeah, and we really do. I mean, we're happy to answer any questions. So don't feel like, it's a stupid question or, you probably heard this 100 times. The only way you can figure it out is by asking. And there's three of us here. If one of us can't figure it out, we'll get together and get an answer for you, or we'll say, that's a good one for a clarification. So, our door is open, our emails are ready, so be sure to get in touch whenever you feel the need. And even if it's just to say they're driving me crazy, that's okay. We've all been there.
Yes.
So we'll be happy to talk you down.
So if there are any, can you give some examples of what interference looks like and what interference doesn't look like?
Okay, well, it's interesting. In improv, it's a little harder to have interference, but it's still possible. One way that team managers often interfere without thinking about it is by telling their kids how to set up their planning time or how to do their actual performances. The kids have to decide for themselves. Or like when we're talking about how they're going to be scored on teamwork during that planning time, start the discussion with something like, okay, look, we're going to get 30 points for teamwork during this time. What do you think good teamwork is going to look like to the judges? And let them tell you what good teamwork looks like. And then you can make a list so they can refer to it. So as they're practicing, you can go back and say, so how did we do on this? You said people don't all talk at the same time. How did we handle that? So rather than you telling them how to do it, let them tell you how it should look. You guys,
and you
any
can
other?
Practice a lot of elements in instant challenge. So give them instant challenges that have a story that they need to act out. So you can talk about beginning, middle, end. You can talk about performance and facing the judges and volume of their voice. You can do all that in the context of instant challenge.
Yeah, that's right. That's a good one.
Hopefully it carries over to the improv challenge.
Yeah, and even like as far as what games they choose, it should be up to the team to choose what games they like. It shouldn't be the team manager saying, well, you guys are really good at this one. Again, ask the kids, what ones do you feel really good at? Which ones are you the most comfortable with? But it's not up to you to tell them which games they should put. I know I've seen in the past team managers who have told their kids exactly how to structure their performances, even to the point of telling them that they should have scripts prepared. I don't think in this challenge a script is ever a good idea just because there's so little time. But if the kids decide they want to do that, that's their choice, but you should not give them that idea.
Are there any more questions out there? You were saying, Marianne, I interrupted you.
Oh, that was me, Shauna. I was just saying, when they're trying to decide which games to choose, or even which street performances to choose, how can you find out about these, how can you find out about firewalkers and parkour? Where do we go to, instead of just saying, go to the internet, say, where do we go? Well, they'll go to the internet, or go to the library, or, let them figure out where to find the information for the games and the street performers.
And remember that they do have to start figuring out about how to put all these pieces together. So when you're talking to them about integrating the elements, try to, I know this is the hardest thing for many teams to understand, that just mentioning something in the course of the skit does not make it integrated into the skit. A couple of years ago, there was a team who had something where they were in a forest and they heard growling. That was one of the elements, was you were being followed by wolves or something like that. And they talked to me later and they said, well, we did that. We had wolves in the forest, but we didn't score very high on it. And I said, well, were the kids just walking through the forest? And then they said, oh, look, there's a wolf. That was probably not as good integration as if they'd been walking along and somebody said, is that your stomach growling? It's really loud. And they go, oh, no, that's not my stomach. And then they, oh, no, it's wolves. So in that case, you know, it was brought more into the story. It wasn't just randomly dropped in. Oh, by the way. Oh, and that's actually one of the rules that we say about integration is if you can say, by the way, or did you know, in front of whatever you're about to say, you're probably not integrating it well. Like if you're talking about, by the way, did you know that mariachi bands have 4 instruments? That's not really integrating it. But if you said, you know, I'm playing, I don't even know what the instruments are in a mariachi band, except different kinds of guitars and a trumpet maybe.
Yeah.
But you know, if they each said, if they each started playing their instruments, then you'd be, or pretending to play their instruments, that would be better integration than just saying, you know, we're a mariachi band.
Basically, all the elements have to matter in your sketch.
I like that.
Yeah.
Is it considered interference to show episodes of Whose Line Is It Anyways if the team hasn't asked to see them?
I don't think so. I think that's part of your providing them with resources. Just like you could, you know, send them to improvencyclopedia.org to look up games, you can expose them to different elements of improv and let them, you know, see what they can learn from it. You do have to be careful. Sometimes sometimes Whose Line It gets a little questionable humor. Yeah, raunchy.
Yeah.
But
I think as long as you're careful not to direct what they're observing, let them translate that into their skit and not say, look, that you could do that. You could, you know, do what they're doing on Whose Line Is It Anyway. Let them translate that over to their skit. But just showing them that is just giving them a tool.
It's just like if they decide they want to make costumes and they don't know how to sew, you can show them how to sew on something else, but they would have to, you know, do their own sewing on their costumes. Our teams don't have to worry about that, but that's, you know, a similar, I guess, an analogy. So, do we have anything else?
There are no more questions.
I'm sure we were just so perfect. We left nothing for you to ask. But as soon as you get off of this webinar, you'll probably think of something else, or after you've had a chance to look over the challenge some more and over the webinar when it's posted. You know, if you have any other questions, like we said, let us know.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you all for coming to our webinar this evening, and thanks to Marianne, and Shauna for giving up their evening to help, and for all of you for giving up your evening to help your teams. Without team managers, we wouldn't have Destination Imagination, and we love you guys to death. So thank you all for attending our webinar this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. Can't wait to see you.
All right.
Bye.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.